apologies. Everybody's present.
Everyone's present, Chairman, yes.
Okay. Any declarations of interest? No. Item 3 is the minute of the meeting 4th December. Can we approve that? Item 4, Scheme of Administration Delegation to Committees, report by Director Corporate Services. Anything to add to the report?
No, Chair.
Any questions on the report? Ian?
Chair, thanks. I'll get a chance to kind of start things off, if you don't mind. Probably more in relation to 2.2 as we go forward. I'll just go through and try and pick up on my notes. I read this a wee while ago. 3.1, the last bullet page in the bottom of page 5. I just wonder how the strategic housing authority that's referring to the housing subcommittee as that goes away in 2017. Just how will that be fulfilled? The strategic housing authority remit, how will that be fulfilled? That's one point. I've got a few points to come back on, Chair. I've took 2 or 3 different notes here. Let me see what else. I suppose I've got the Enterprising Council. I'm picking up on the other subcommittee. I'll go back. I think that's. See what other notes I've got here. Sorry, Chairman. Page 18, and page 17. Actually, I'll pick up on the 2 points at the same time. The Enterprising. I think that's the delegations to the Enterprising Council, if I remember correctly. Just as a catch up with myself. Now, we've got 2 different pages. I'll tell you what, it must be. You've got 2 different page numbers.
I think it was just referred to the page of Councillor Crothers. Unfortunately, the scheme is numbered as well.
That's what it is. I've got mixed up. I've wrote the wrong numbers. So it is actually page 25, sorry, and page 26 or page 30. That's what it is. It's the points I think I'm just looking back at my notes and say the Enterprising Council, the subcommittee. I think I've mentioned this in the past. I think it should have its own committee, separate from economy, environment, infrastructure. Should come from full council. And again, I think it kind of goes back. It's a lump of work that the Scrutiny Performance Committee carried out. And I see I've got 2 of the members here that are on that, maybe 3 actually, including Alistair. But we carried out a load of work on procurement, commissioning and delivering. And I think enterprising, procurement, commission, delivering, they all fit into that. And I think, and as part of that work, what we found out was we did a lot of site visits and such like across other councils, but the councils that took it really seriously, procurement, commission, delivering, and particularly procurement, and they set up their own committee to deal with that, had the most benefits. And they really did benefit from that. And as the enterprising council, procurement, and the commission and delivery side, really that should have its own standalone committee. I'd like to put that out there. I'm not going to move it. I'd like to see what other members are thinking, obviously what officers are thinking as well in regards to that. And the other thing, I think it's on page 26. No, is it? I'm looking for, that's enterprise. No, sorry, it's page 25. It's the Harbour Subcommittee. I think, according to the delegation, we're only looking at, just maybe clarity on that, it's the council's role as a duty holder in accordance with the Port Marine Safety Code for its harbours. I think we should be explicit that should cover Dumfries and Galloway and any aspects in relation to the Port Marine Safety Code, whether it's council owned or not, because we have quite a few different things, whether it's Annan, whether it's the NIF, whether it is, again, we've got different things going on at different harbours, potential. I think that'd be a really good committee in which to pick that type of work up and make clear decisions. Again, if we're going to have a harbour committee, then it shouldn't just be focused, I think it's on the 5 harbours, I think, the council own. We should take a wider kind of look at that, if that's okay. I've got other things, Chairman, but just as a starter, one of great advice in regards to enterprise and council being a standalone committee from full council, or even a subcommittee, but with a wider remit, taking into consideration procurement and commission and delivering, having that oversight, and the harbours taking in, making sure it takes in the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, not just the council-owned stuff within Dumfries and Galloway. But just as a start, obviously come back to the IGB stuff, but other folk will want to say in regards to that as well, Chairman.
I'll try and pick up each point in turn, and maybe Ron will add to it as well. I think in terms of the Strategic Housing Authority role, I think the view you'd taken in your initial deliberations was that over time that you wanted to see that function being overseen by a communities committee. but at the moment you wanted to continue with the housing committee until you could take a view on how well that would work and be clear about the functions there. So that's kind of what we've taken from the previous debates, but obviously if that needs to be firmed up in terms of timelines or indeed asking to come back on that decision at some point, at the moment it talks about a deadline date for moving rather than a time to come back and look at it. So that's certainly something that members could take a view on. In terms of the enterprise and subcommittee, the discussion that you've had so far is really focused on the trading elements of what is DG First at the moment, and those functions transferring into EEI, and then how you would deal with oversight of their ability to get member approval to bid for contracts and works, but also oversight of their trading operations as well. So it was almost a kind of sub-part of EEI. The elements that are in procurement, you're quite right, and contract management are certainly areas that the Scrutiny Committee had looked at, and also the Contract Management Service Review that's coming forward to P&R Committee in February. And I think Rona's leading that review, but generally we were looking at procurement of the Council going out the way and contract management as a function of Policy and Resources Committee in terms of oversight of contract management, supplier management across the Council, not just in relation to the trading operations. So I think it would depend on how members took a view about that alongside the trading operations. That's entirely a matter for you. Perhaps I can ask Rona to comment further.
You know, I completely agree. You know, what's been said, procurement does need more of a focus in a committee, and we saw that in the review that members did. I don't particularly have a view except to say that with procurement moving to finance after April, you know, there was some sense in P&R, you know, perhaps taking that overview of that. So that's all I would add to that.
Chair, I don't think I need to come in, because my understanding of it was our ability under the Enterprise and Services Subcommittee to bid for work, whereas there would be a clash if it was the same committee that was actually bidding for work and was then actually taking a decision on which work we were bidding for. So, but that's clarified. That was my understanding as well.
Just on the last point about Harbour Subcommittee, the response in terms of the subcommittee was on the basis of the decision that EEI took around the establishment of the subcommittee, and it was delegated to this committee to make recommendations back to full council. So certainly we can have a look at that with officers, and if it's looking to broaden it beyond those not owned by the council and a more general oversight, then we'll look at what that might involve and bring it back to you.
I just think it's relevant because for why we haven't got that remit at the moment, it's not proposed, but we do actually do it anyways. Ken, the council's down there working in Annan, Richard could verify that, works in the NIF, it's things that are not actually our actual harbour, so it is, I think it would just give it a sense of clarity with direction. Ken, we'd have a committee then that could actually take care of that, because we do it anyways. It's not something we neglect, but maybe Rona's not again.
Sorry, yeah, just on the harbours, I think a few of us have gone through quite a lot of pain on the NIRT steering group, and you know, I think for a committee to be dealing with harbour revision orders and new harbour orders, at least to look at them in the detail before they have to go for approval either at EEI or full council, a lot of that work I think would be valuable to be done in a committee setting, but that's just a view I'd put out there for the chair and the committee to perhaps comment on there.
I've got to agree, we've spent, about 3 years on this navigation trust, and it is time consuming. And I mean, a lot of it's petty stuff that grown folk shouldn't be arguing about, quite frankly, but there we go. Somebody's got to do it, I suppose. Colin?
I mean, I remember the discussion at EI and the reason why this came forward, and it was to do with the concerns that we did have specific legal responsibilities around harbours, and it would be beneficial to have a committee specifically responsible for that work. So I'll be a wee bit concerned just to suddenly widen it out, because it did go against effectively what was being requested, which was oversight of the council's harbours. I don't know where the other stuff goes at the moment, to be perfectly honest, around navigation, etc. I'm not sure what, I presume that goes to policy and resources if there are any decisions to be made. I'm a wee bit concerned around that, but if that's where members want to go. But that certainly wasn't the request that came from members of the EI committee, which I remember was unanimous at the time.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. The first 2 points, actually. First one, paragraph 3.5 in the covering report, we're talking about the integration scheme requiring that the Integrated Joint Board annual performance report on the strategic plan is received by the Council for noting. Now, I think some of us might take the attitude that you expect to see a bit more than merely noting. And I would like to think that we can revisit that, Chair. Critical appraisal, would be one of the more polite phrases that would come to mind. That so, as I say, I'd be grateful if that could be considered. So, and the other one, Chair, paragraph 4.6, page 16 of 30, at the very top of the page, we're talking about an application before the Planning Applications Committee has already been the subject of public speaking at a previous meeting. Then only those members who were present and heard the representations can vote on the application should the committee determine to divide. I wonder, Chair, I'm supportive of the principle, let me make that clear to you, but it's the focusing on the word vote. Theoretically, the way I read that, might not be present at a previous meeting. You come along to the adjourned meeting or whatever, you act as an advocate either for or against the application, and it's only when it comes to a vote at the end of the day that you're debarred from participating. And it seems to me, sir, that the wider issue of acting as an advocate is the more important one as far as I'm concerned, because a member may, in fact, not have been at the earlier meeting, hasn't heard all of the discussion and all of the deliberation pre the adjournment, and yet comes along, as I say, and acts as an advocate on that basis, and is theoretically, the way I read this, Chair, is permitted to do so. It's only when it gets to the stage of a vote that he or she is debarred, and properly so. But as I say, it seems to me that, I think what I'm leading up to, Chair, is that, given if my comments about advocacy are well founded, it might be appropriate to say to members in these circumstances, well, would you quit the chamber, as it were, and take no part in the participation of this issue, standing that you've already missed a fair bit of involvement. I'd be interested, as always, Chair, to hear your views and other colleagues' views as well.
But I mean, it is a good point, because all we're saying is that somebody could have missed a meeting where we heard the presentation from officers, we heard from the applicant, heard from the agent, heard from objectors, may have decided to go on a site visit, we then reconvene, and somebody who wasn't at the meeting, who's a member of the committee, that would allow them to sit there and actually say, oh, I don't think this is right, I think that's wrong. And that goes against all sort of normal judgment anyway, so I think it's maybe not the word vote, it's maybe the word participate needs to be put in there. Ian?
I mean, I took advice straight from the Chief Investigating Officer of Standards Commission in regards to planning applications, how we should deal with them, so on and so forth, and he was quite clear at the time. He said, as soon as you've got that report in your hands and you've had time to read it and consider it, you can make a judgment and make a decision at that point in time. You didn't have to go through the committee process, and you're more than able, so you could go to the press and say, I'm going against this, or be very much for it, and still participate within the decision-making process. Taking that into consideration, it makes a mockery of what we've actually done in the past, and I've mentioned that before, but it's never been listened to. So I mean, I think it's illegitimate the way we actually conduct our business in the Planning Application Committee. I think if you've got the report, you've read it, you've considered it, you've got enough information to actually be part of the decision-making process, whether you've been on a site visit or heard the representations or not. That's my view.
I think you leave the council to dangerous territory there. I mean, it's like having a trial and you call for a background report, and then you come back and you appoint a new member of the jury who hasn't heard any submissions, and they can declare somebody guilty or not guilty. I mean, if you haven't been at the original meeting where the matter has been discussed and debated, I mean, it already happens at the moment that you can't vote, right? All Alistair's saying is tidy the matter up, because somebody could actually turn up and make a speech in favour of the application or against the application. And that is unfair to the applicant and the objectors. If somebody who's never even heard what they had to say suddenly pops up at a meeting taking one side or the other, you've got to have a bit of natural justice here.
Sorry, Chairman, I didn't mean respect. I think there's ways around about it. I'm not going to labour on it by any means because I brought it up in the past and it usually falls on deaf ears. So, but I do think, according to the information that I received and the advice I received from the Chief Investigating Officer of the Standards Commission at the time, he was quite clear. You can make a decision at that point in time and be quite open in your view in regards to whether you go for or against or indifferent, as long as you've got that report in your hand and you've read through that detailed report. So what we're doing goes against what the Standards Commission's view is in regards to code of conduct. Maybe you've got a regulation or a process thing, but you're relating it to a court. I don't think we're in a court setting when it comes to it's regulatory, fair enough, but it's no court setting. But I understand your argument.
I mean, you're making a decision on somebody's, could be somebody's livelihood, somebody's future, somebody's house, and for somebody to turn up and want to take sides who hasn't heard either the different sides of the argument. It was different in the old planning days where you didn't hear from the applicant or the agent. It was purely down to the committee. It's not really a problem, but you're hearing from outside people, you've got to show them a bit of courtesy as well. I mean, I think it's a bit discourteous for somebody who wasn't at a previous meeting to start talking about an application when they haven't heard the circumstances of both sides either.
Chair, I was just thinking, if you had in the olden days whereby you had the applications in front of you, no public speaking, yes, you have the fullest of information before you. But if you have a body where you actually allow members of the public to speak, there could be information given out in that time. So you never have the fullest of information in front of you prior to a committee. And if you then also decide that you're going to a site visit, you couldn't have had the fullest of information, or you could have taken a decision on the day. So therefore, you can't really comment. If you have a different process where you have no speaking, no site visits, then that's different. But I would say currently our process doesn't allow us to follow the lines that the Standards Commission say.
Well, I'm interested in Ian's reference to the Chief Investigating Officer of the Standards Commission. Those of us who have been involved with that body would take the view that it's, well, I wouldn't be quite as disrespectful as quote the late great Sheriff Principal Johnson, but you know, it's nothing more than a matter of opinion. And I would remind Ian that the time that several years ago, the time that Jane Maitland, he and I went to the Standards Commission roadshow in the county buildings in Ayr, we raised the issue about you know, the code, implying that, you know, we do not have any advocacy role in operational matters on behalf of constituents, etc. And they gave us a clear, unequivocal assurance that that was not what was meant, and they were shortly going to be revising the code, and that would be clarified in the revised code. It never happened, Chair. So, as I say, I have a somewhat, I won't say jaundice, that would be taking it too far, but as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to think I've got a healthy scepticism for pronouncements from people in that position. Were it the Court of Session, or perhaps even more so than our bench of the Court of Session, yes, that'd be a different ballgame, because that essentially would be prescriptive, it would be binding. But that's nothing more, as I say, than an expression of opinion. Valuable and helpful, albeit that it is. It's nothing more than that. So I won't over-egg the pudding. I'll leave it as I've already said it. And I think your suggestions of, you know, changing voting to participating would be eminently sensible from my perspective.
Chair, can I just come in? That particular paragraph was agreed last March at full council. As far as I can recall, we tried to add in about not if you didn't participate in a site visit as well as hearing representations, but that wasn't accepted by full council at the time. So it was purely on the basis if you had not heard the representations previously that you could not vote. But again, we can look at that, the wording of that.
And in the back of Claire's comments, sir, I would put my hands up and say that, you know, I would have to, admit to something akin to a road to Damascus, because I was one of those. In fact, it was, as indeed were you, with regards to the difference, the advocating that point of view. But by the time Jim Dempster and various other people had finished with their submissions, it was quite clear that, as far as I'm concerned, they were in the right. We had not thought it through properly. So I'll leave it at that.
I would also be pleased to hear that the Standards Commission have revising their code of conduct. We haven't received it yet, but so we'll await that with anticipation.
I did raise it at the last meeting. I know we have agreed the minute, and it was my intention to raise it. But it's really under, we're looking at 2 there, and it's powers reserved to the council. And again, it's the issue of a motion going before full council and the removal, it being partly to the removal of delegated powers. It's to build into this that a motion should not be lost because it has not had the removal of delegated powers at the full council. I believe it should revert back to the parent committee. But, again, I accept it was at the last meeting, not in the minute, but I would hope we can return to that particular issue and to fully debate it.
Okay, page 16 of 30, area committees, the members of the committee. I don't know if this has been addressed or not, we'll perhaps get an update on the situation. It says members whose electoral wards are wholly or partly within the boundaries of these committees as defined by the council from time to time. So that means that Councillor Crothers and myself should really be on Nithsdale area committee because Mousel, Cransfield, Ruthwell are in Nithsdale, and we are obviously not on that committee. There's a governance issue there which affects the people in these areas because there's a bit of democratic confusion. Are they involved with Nithsdale or Annandale, Nithsdale? The councillors from Annandale, Nithsdale, but the services are provided from Nithsdale. So it's what solution can be put in place? Do we attend the area committee in Nithsdale, or do we realign the services so that they fit in with the people that we represent?
Well, I remember when this was drawn up, and it was on the basis of when the new bigger ward boundaries back in 2007, and there was a big anomaly, and that was the 2 wards in Nithsdale, which was Trequeer and the landward one that stretched from Cargan Bridge down to Southern Ness, which were then merged with 2 Stewartry wards. Probably at that time it wasn't picked up. There's that peripheral area which was within Nithsdale district, was then added on to the the South Annandale ward. But I think I don't see any point in changing that at the moment, because bear in mind we are going through we haven't heard from the Boundary Commission yet what the final outcome is, but we are going through a Boundary Commission change, and depending what happens there later on in the year, because the elections next year will be fought in the new boundaries, that's maybe the time to come back and revisit that one, Richard, if that's all right with you.
That's fair enough, Chair, but if we stick with this, that means that Councillor Crothers and I should be on this Nithsdale area committee to represent our constituents.
All I'm suggesting is we've operated that way for the last 9 years, because the boundaries were determined way back 2006 for implementation 2007, and they haven't altered. There is going to be a major alteration this year, and what I'm suggesting is let's wait till that major alteration comes in and see what effect that has, because we don't know if the boundaries may change. We know that in some areas there's a massive change, like across in the west, where you've got 2 4-member wards instead of 3 3-member wards. We know that one of the Annandale wards is getting cut back, one stays the same basically, but there's minor changes to the Nithsdale ward. So all I'm saying is I'm not unhappy with what you're saying, but it's how we tackle it. If we're only talking a small smidgen of Nithsdale, perhaps that should be better transferred into Annandale and Nithsdale. It's no major slice of the population like it was in the Abbey ward, but it's 50-50 between the Stewartry and Nithsdale. That one was obvious right from day one.
Is it all right if I come in just on the back on the same point, because Richard's raised it? We've raised it many times with Alec Haswell previously, but obviously moving on. But as long as it's still on the radar, I think that's absolutely fine. But for instance, it was at Clansfield Council a couple of weeks ago. They raised the fact they were coming to they'd put in for the Community Safety Fund application in regards to a bus stop in at Rathwell there, and I said, well, we've still up against the same thing. We can't actually go in and represent or put your case forward at that committee, and that's happened on many, many occasions. I find it very frustrating, to say the least, Chairman. So if it's still on the radar, looks at possibly being addressed. I've asked them to put it down to Ernestdale so we can actually speak up on their behalf, but it's never ever kind of naturally they lean towards Ernestdale because that's where they're lying. I think that would be the appropriate way for them to apply.
Chair, just going on what Colin's saying, you would have 31 members at Nistdale. Therefore, it's the biggest committee of this council other than full council, because you've also got Castle Douglas and the Glen Kens, because Treggles is in Nistdale. You'd also have the fact that councillors Gilroy, Maitland and Wiper would be in the Wigtonshire one, because Cretan, I think it's Cretan, is in Wigtonshire, but they represent it. So there's various anomalies. My understanding is the Wigtonshire part works well, whereby the councillors there can represent the members where it's an officer interaction, whereas there seems to be an issue in Nistdale because members try and contact Nistdale members. Sorry, it's in the Castle Douglas area, and then phone the Castle Douglas. No, that's Nistdale. Now, there is an issue there, I think. It seems to work well in the Wigtonshire-Stewartry border, but the Stewartry-Nistdale, and I don't know, the Nistdale-Annandale-Eskdale one seems to be an issue as well. So maybe we need to look at working practices so that they can. My understanding is also the budgets are realigned, so the money should actually be sitting in the A&E budget for that population. Therefore, if there's an application for an issue from Rathwell, it should actually go to Annandale and Nestdale. It shouldn't come to Nistdale. Maybe we are paying for other folks' work.
Purely for the record, Chair, if you'll indulge me, Creetown was never part of Wigtonshire, as I understand it. It's always been part of the Stewartry of Kirkcudbright, which used to come up to the River Cree and Minnigaff. There you go. No, as an Ayrshire man, I'll keep my thoughts to myself on that one.
So when's your next meeting so we can both come?
So I think, I take on what you're saying, but I think let's wait till the Boundary Commission reports to the policy, and then we can bring this one back. But I think Ivor's hit the nail on the head. We do apportion the money for area committees on a population basis. So you've been getting the money for these areas, but Nistdale's been subsidising them. It's done on a population basis. Well, it's for boundaries. It is. Anyway, they're being reviewed anyway. Your money's getting cut for next year. Nistdale's getting more.
Just a small thing that maybe's brought up. I just clarity on it. The social work, I suppose we would say some words on the IGB as well, but the Social Work Service Committee has a complaints reporting process to the committee at the end. Don't see that in here. Is it in here? If no, what we're actually doing? Is that a responsibility of the IGB or what happens?
At the moment, it would remain, but there's a consultation that Social Work Committee were advised of, where there's legislation being proposed to take it into the functions of the SPSO, so that it would no longer fall to the committee. So we've anticipated that in drafting this, but we'll check it in terms of fine detail and the timing of that. We understand it'll be from the 1st of April.
Yeah, Chair, you did sort of skate over what I was saying in respect of a report or a consideration being given to motions that come in, and I would hope that that is the case and that it is brought back here for consideration, discussion.
Yeah, just Chair, to assure Councillor Scobie, we are working on that report and we'll have that to next meeting. And it was because we wanted to give a balanced report and do a bit more research that it wasn't actually ready for this committee. So apologies for that, but we'll have it ready for next time.
Forgive me for getting back to the substance of the report, which is really what we're trying to consider, which is, I suppose, giving direction on a number of issues that are probably outstanding. The first, I think, we've probably answered around the enterprise and subcommittee. I think Ivor highlighted what we see as the role there, and why it should sit as a subcommittee of Economy, Environment and Infrastructure Committee. That's effectively what we're asked to give direction on 3.2. Also, what we do regarding the long-term future with regards to welfare reform, I suppose, housing. My inclination is that really should be a decision, I suppose, for the next council. I mean, we're only 12 months away from the next council, that effectively those committees continue, and then obviously should then be part of Communities Committee from the first day of the new council, basically, unless that new council decides otherwise and decides they want to have various subcommittees. But I think that should be the sort of time scale. There's no point in us changing it halfway through the year if a new council decide they may want to do something differently 6 months later. So I think they should just continue for the lifetime of this council, and then be part of communities unless the new council decide otherwise. In terms of children, young people, etc., the one question I've got is just clarity around the role of teacher reps and parent reps, and just what will happen in practical terms when it comes to those issues that might not necessarily be education issues that go before that committee. Do they just not participate at that point, and do we have, I don't know, like the plan in Westminster where we'll have English laws for whatever it is, they'll be told they can't vote on it. What exactly, well, they can't vote anyway, but what exactly will the guidance be at that point? You know, will there be something written down basically, or will it just be a kind of up to the individual members to decide whether they participate in items that might not be deemed as education? I think I could do with a wee bit of clarity on what we plan to do around that, basically. Also, 3.4 asks us to consider the role of the committee in terms of how it works alongside social work services. I'm not entirely sure what we're being asked there. Is that just how far we go with the delegation to social work, is it, or do we keep things that are policy within the Children's Committee and really have the sort of regulation issues within social work committee? I'm not entirely sure what we're being kind of asked there, basically.
Chair, I'll come back on the issue of the Social Work Committee and the Children and Young People Committee. I suppose it's where members want to draw a line in terms of services. With a Children and Young People Lifelong Learning Service, you know, is it strictly those things under the Chief Social Work Officer's remit, or is there something wider within that new directorate that you would want to include within social work, where it's maybe across a number of functions? So what we were proposing is that we would bring those lists of functions back with advice from Colin Grant, the Chief Social Work Officer, about where that line would be drawn appropriately in the next committee. But it was really just to canvass if members had any views at this stage or any particular thoughts about that.
Right.
Yeah, Chair, dare I stray into what is, to me, a minefield, and we're looking at both, but an overarching to all is the legislation coming in April of this year, I believe, or is it August, in terms of GIRFIC, getting the right for every child, and it spans the three, from housing to social work to education, and perhaps many others, and it's the function as to you know, how well, in terms of an area committee, if it's got the function of monitor social work and receiving reports on education, where it fits in terms of the parent committee, who has the responsibility to receive reports, not only on lifelong learning, but also getting it right for every child, you know, in terms of social work, or is it a housing issue, or is it many others?
I think it's important for us to be able to set those functions down and for members to take a view on them at the next committee. What I would say in terms of that clarity, the relationship between committees will be really important in terms of having a view about where things should go. And it might be something that we set out, but have to come back to make sure it works effectively. And I think that's why, I suppose, in the report, Ron is suggesting that we set out those functions beneath each of the committees, which we haven't done in the scheme before. But we have it now within the scheme that members have agreed around officers. So being absolutely clear about those functions and activities that are covered by each of the committees. And then if there's any issue around that or crossover or relationship issues, then we can start to work through them at the next committee.
Ian?
Wally's touched on something that was going through my mind, and I was going to ask it here in depth. I thought, no, I'd be better waiting until next week with the IGB board, kind of integration joint board, because I've got still, I think we need a lot of clarity in regards to its role, what it's taking for social work, how to undertake them duties. Something came up earlier this week in the Housing Subcommittee in regards to scheme of assistance. And if we have a large application coming in through the care and repair grant scheme, we would say, I think it's over 10k, that would normally come to the Housing Subcommittee and we would determine that through members. And that's all been moved. Now we've made that decision, we've recognised that that goes to the IGB. And I've got a lot of questions about how the functions have changed. I mean, my understanding was quite clear that the IGB had an overarching steer. It developed a strategic plan, the 4 locality plans, and it could influence both parties in how they went forward and brought them services to fruition, you could say. But now it's appearing that it is a wee bit more in depth. They will have their own committees, their own subcommittees out with it's becoming a larger organisation than what I actually thought, and more controlling. But I realised that could be for the better, it could be for the worse. That'll have to come and kind of, as it goes forward, it'll shape up and we'll see how it works. But for me, Wally's touched on some of the council side of stuff, the IGB side. There's still a lot of work and understanding as this goes forward and develops, just to get our heads round. And I'm still confused in a lot of matters in regards to this. Maybe it's just stuff that we'll have to work through, but I think Wally brings up a relevant point.
You'll be delighted to hear that nobody's cracked it across Scotland. We're in contact with a number of local authorities to make sure that we can deal with this in an effective way, and have they got ideas around it. Primarily the Social Work Services Committee, in terms of adult services, will have the responsibility for delivery of the services in terms of day-to-day, because those services still lie with the council, although they're directed by the IGB. But more importantly, it has a role in assuring the IGB that the quality of the practice of social work in relation to adult services is appropriate, and that's part of the arrangements that were set out in this scheme as well. So we're working through that, but a lot of that relates to the practice of the Chief Social Work Officer's exercise of her duties, the reporting through that to that Social Work Services Committee. So there's almost a flow out of the council in terms of the services being delivered, and a flow back in of the effectiveness of the services from the IGB. And we're trying to get that kind of clarity of all of those elements. And you'll know from the IGB papers that we're seeking guidance from Scottish Government Legal Department around a number of points, even around declaration of interests and all those sorts of things, which I think the devil's in the detail, but I can assure you that nobody's cracked it out there in terms of there's an answer. We're working our way through it methodically at this stage, and part of the work that's been done so far within the papers is reflecting what we've been told so far, so there is a bit more work to do.
Robert?
Yeah, Chair, and 3334 and 35 focus on the IGB. And throw another one into the works in terms of, if we look at housing to police, to external bodies under antisocial behaviour and noise nuisance, as to where responsibility lies in terms of scheme of delegation, what committee, and so forth. And while the police report, as I understand it, to all area committees on touching on antisocial behaviour, who's got the authority? That could lie with communities in the future in terms of community safety team, but it could span housing, it could span police and so forth. And it's that, I think it is, as Lorna touched on, it's that relationship between the various committees and external bodies, ultimately in terms of the improvement of services, monitoring and so forth and so on. So there is an issue here that perhaps we haven't. really folks that just come into light.
I think it's a level of complexity, the integration brings, but I think it can be effective, and I think having that clarity, even if that wasn't in existence and that wasn't happening, there would need to be a clarity of functions across the council committees as they're reorganised. So that's a piece of work we're working on with directors just now, just around their functions and where they naturally lie from our perspective around the committees that you're starting to propose and crystallise upon. And then we'll highlight at the next committee some of the areas of debate or decision for members, your view on that, but also areas where we need to strengthen the relationships and the reporting lines between committees if there's some areas. And we have that already with a number of committees, so I think we can do that, but having that set out explicitly is really important.
On that particular point, would that not be a point of competence at the time? Because if they try to vote on something that didn't actually come under, if what you're saying is correct, didn't actually come under their voting rights, the chair would say, sorry, or the GC wouldn't even be called into the roll call. But you may be correct that we do go away and do a bit further work, but I thought that had just been picked up through governance. If it is the fact that they're not entitled to vote on, say, social work because they're there for education reasons, then I would imagine the GC would be called in the roll call.
Yeah, but there isn't a... The only thing that's national is the fact that you've got to have the religious reps on your education committee. We're one of the few authorities that still has teachers. They used to be statutory reps as well till the government changed that. But we kept the teacher reps. Now we've included parent reps. And what you don't want to get into is this new format coming along and the chairman saying, oh, by the way, you folk will have to leave, and somebody challenges that. I'd rather have a framework in place so as the chairman's no left making a decision that can be challenged. Let's get it right from the start rather than guessing, because I think there's wee intricacies where does the education boundary stop. So I'd rather get a bit of guidance from particularly the legal people, and that would help whoever the chairman of the committee happens to be. I think it's only sensible.
If my memory serves me right, Chair, we did get an opinion from Jonathan Mitchell about 3 years ago on that participation, and I think perhaps your idea of splitting the agenda and having a framework that makes it clear that the education items will be taken first, and that is what that legislation will apply to, would be something we could work around. Because that was one of the reasons I raised it, because it is an issue for us. And I think, as you said earlier, participation can also influence a decision, not just the voting.
Chair, you sort of raised the issue with regard to budgets. Now, if you've got your children, young people, lifelong learning budget up for discussion, and the director has decided that, fortunately, education can afford a £10,000 transfer towards sport and leisure. Now, do you take that as a separate issue, or do you take that as an educational issue? Because the parents might want the money kept there, whereas the councillors, on a balance, may think that it's a good idea to put it into leisure and sport to help a service that needs the money. So it's not as clear-cut as an educational issue, because that is actually affecting education because you've taken 10,000 out of their budget.
That's why I specifically mentioned the budget. It may well be that certain decisions have to be taken at a full council level to guide that committee. I think you may well have to say they maybe didn't have a flexibility for that situation. That's why I really need to get Rona and the legal eagles to take a wee bit look, because we didn't want to be challenged. So rather than just flying by the seat of your pants and getting caught, I'd rather we try to put safeguards in place to make sure we're doing it properly, and we're no disadvantaging anybody. So I think we can leave that to yourself, Rona. I think that is the problem. If you try to shift bits of the budget from one part to the other, how is that dealt with? Leave that to the lawyers to puzzle out and see if they can help us in this one. Okay, any other items? Ian?
All right, so I just wonder if you just give a wee recap of what we've kind of thought. We've touched on the area committees that Richard brought up. We've touched on, I think Colin's right in regard to enterprise and council, because we've discussed that there could, Ivor's brought up the fact that could possibly be a conflict in regards to procurement and enterprise and council. But I'd like to just clarify. I think Rona said that would lie in policy and resources. Just how would that lie? And there's other things. I think Alistair brought up something about planning application committee and change of word. And any chance you could be recapping what we've kind of decision we've made, please?
You want to do that?
I always have a look of dread when I'm asked to sum up. I have copious notes, and of course they will be translated into the minute, Councillor Carruthers, but just briefly, as I don't want to extend the meeting as long as it's lasted already. Indeed talked about the enterprising subcommittee, whether it be a subcommittee of full council, EI, or indeed a standing committee in its own right. Looking at the enterprising arm of DG first, procurement, commissioning and delivery. Talking about the procurement actually going to P&R committee, the reviews undergoing at the moment about contract management service. At the moment we're keeping strategic housing issues with the housing subcommittee, but if it's something we want to revisit, but I think the mood is that these housing and welfare keep going until the new council comes into being. You raised the issue yourself about the harbours subcommittee, making it explicit that it covers non-council owned harbours, but I think that's an issue we need to go back and look at the original report to the EI committee, because that wasn't in the original request to full council. I think you mentioned, Rona, about harbour orders being dealt with at committee would be a most valuable asset. So, but again, we'll look at the remit of that. Councillor Geddes raised about 4.6 in the scheme at present to do with the Planning Applications Committee, and to look at use of the word participate rather than vote. That was something that went to full council back in March, so we'll look at that again and take that back. Councillor Scobie raised the issue about the removal of delegation, Standing Order 13. A report on that will come back to the next meeting on the 4th of March. Various discussion about the membership of area committees with reference to 4.9 in the scheme, but given that the boundary review will be taking place for the 2017 council elections, I think we leave it as it is at the moment. But I think just have a look at working practices, the alignment of budgets and the apportionment of the discretionary funding, but perhaps that's something that can be looked at just now, or perhaps it has to wait until 2017. Social work complaints, Lorna mentioned that there would be legislation in place to take these to the SPSO, so there wouldn't be a council function. Issues around the role, obviously, we've just discussed there, of the teacher, church and religious representatives, and what constitutes a sole education issue, which would go up to the Young People and Lifelong Learning Committee. Dad that obviously had that such arrangement many years ago when we had a Children's Services Committee, which looked at social work and education issues. So maybe look back and see what actually we did all those years ago. Maybe things are a bit more complicated now. And just really generally to look at the links between the committees. We need to have specific delegations, which we have for delegations to officers, but make sure the delegations are set out explicitly in the scheme, which in some instances they're not. Obviously, P&R has a very large list of delegations, and we don't seem to have many under the other committees. So I think if we look at that, bring it to the next meeting, see where there's crossover, where there kind of dubiety as to when a report goes to which committee, and that'll be something we can nail for the 4th of March, so we can have the scheme approved at full council. What's anything else? The role of the IGB, obviously, is something that we're looking at the moment and get clarity on that. I think that's possibly it, Chairman. If I've missed anything.
Could move that as a minute for the next meeting, Chairman. Save as an item of business.
I did mention paragraph 3.5, sir, and whether or not it would be possible to make the word noting a bit more robust.
Did indeed, yes. I did actually have a note of that. Sorry. You did indeed say noting should be critical appraisal rather than noting.
I think the piece of work around social work and Children's Committee is obviously going to be absolutely crucial. I don't know what other members' views are as how far that should go, whether they think social work is primarily just around the regulation issues, or whether or not it does have a substantial role in terms of children's issues. I mean, I don't know what other members think, but I think that piece of work at the next meeting will be absolutely crucial, because as the delegation stands at the moment, although we have a Children's Committee, actually, when it comes to any issues around social work and children, is entirely within the Social Work Services Committee delegation as it stands at the moment. And obviously, I think members need to be very clear whether or not that's the direction they want to go down, or they actually see the Children's Committee effectively having responsibility for those things. So I think that's a really important piece of work at the next meeting.
I just can't remember what we agreed on this. Were we just doing away with police and fire altogether and not bothering? I can't remember. I maybe missed it. Police and fire. 25. Right. Aye.
Around police, we effectively said continue with it, and a lot of it was to do with pending the outcome of the Scottish Government's review into how the police are held to account effectively. I don't know when that reports, but I think we're quite clear just to wait to see if whether or not they'll strengthen the involvement of local councils in that scrutiny role.